Good morning, everyone. This is Representative Carolyn Partridge talking to you from her home, my home in Windham, Vermont. And it is Friday, June 12th. And we are meeting today to talk about some of the bills that we've been working on. And in particular, as you will all remember, we passed our version of the Dairy Assistance Program, the CRF money program, out at our last meeting, and we're going to hear about the Senate's version today. So we're really fortunate to have Senator Bobby Starr with us, and Bobby's going to give us a nice overview, and then Michael Grady will go through it for us. So Bobby, welcome and thank you.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to be with you, and good to see all of you. It would be much better if we were sitting in your regular committee room, but I guess this is the best we can do with what we have to deal with.
Yeah.
Backing up, you know, we've been fooling with this dairy assistance through the COVID-19 thing for weeks and weeks, and over the time we've heard from, and it was unbelievable when Linda sent me the numbers, but we've had 45 to 50 different people testify and meet with over the process. And what we had originally planned was about 8.8 million for dairy farmers, but it would have been sent out over 3 different allotments. So it would have been 28 or 29 million dollars, somewhere in that range. And then we were, you know, then the governor finally came out with his plan with 40 million. So I said, well, that's great. We'll use 10 million or so for the other farmers that could have had losses. Well, as you know, we all have bosses, and my boss told our committee that they wanted us to work within $30 million because they wanted to keep money for this fall in case we had a flare up or unexpected downturn in the economy, that we could possibly have a couple $100 million left of culvert money to utilize, and maybe even do another round in ag and other things. So anyhow, we ended up using 30 million. We used 29,900,000 and some dollars to, well, it was $992,000. So we were a little bit $8,000 short of hitting our 30 million, which was, I thought, pretty good. When we figured this all out, we came that dairy at this point in time in history is 70% of our total ag economy in Vermont. So some of the committee said, well, we should do this fair and equitable. And so we shot, or some of them shot to put 70% of that money into dairy, and the balance would go to processors, other types of processors, as well as other farm types. So we finally got it up to 22, 23 million for dairy, and the roughly 7 million for other farms and other types like meat processing and all the other processors. Within the dairy division part, the 23 million, if you look at the numbers, and Michael will go through them, but it was, a lot of it was headed toward the smaller and medium-sized farms. And you take a small farmer that's milking some from 0 to 50 animals, they would get a check for, if they qualified, for $14,500. And then if they were making cheese, processing, making butter or what the heck ever, they could apply for the less than 500 pounds of milk a day, and they could get up to $30,000 from that program. If they were doing the small certified farms, there's 271 of them farms that are below 50 cows. And well, give or take, because we've lost 14 in May, there's 262 small farms, and you must have all these numbers that are small certified farms that have between 50 and 200 animals. Well, if they, in the cheese part and the manufacturing processing part, if they process 500 to 10,000 pounds, they could apply and get up to $40,000 in that plan. And it goes all the way up to, they would get 29,000 for a direct payment. The medium farms would get a $55,000 payment. And if they were a processor like Monument Farms and them that process, they could also apply and get a bunch of other 50,000 from that program. And the large farms, they would be able to receive up to $100,000, with qualifying. And the big cheese and processors, they max out at 60,000, and that's because they could also apply at ACCD for grants from them. And I think you probably learned that our farmers could apply for the PPP program, as well as they could apply for the UI, I think it's PUA program, which is self-employed unemployment. So, we worked a long time trying to make this equitable and trying to keep the money headed toward the smaller producers, the ones that, that people come see their cows out on the grass and in that. And we also put 192,000 in for VHCB to advance their farm viability stuff, so they can get more out onto the farms with more people to help in any way that they would request help for. I don't know, there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there, but that's the overall, I think, part of the bill. Michael can fill you in on details, and we can take questions.
Okay, thanks, Bobby. I just want to go back. Thank you for that overview. I appreciate it. But I want to go back to the original premise of your thought process. And that is that 70% of the agriculture pie was dairy. And that, so dairy should get, 70% of the money, when I thought the money was really dedicated to the folks that were losing money. This was to make up for economic harm. And we know that there are people who are struggling. Diversified ag folks are struggling, but some are doing really well as well. So just wondered how you came up with that as, not necessarily you, but your committee members, how you came up with that as sort of a deciding factor.
Well, I guess part of it was my doings, because when we first started out, I said, look, we want to be fair and equitable and use everybody equally. And from that point, of course, some members said, oh boy, I can hear them talking to themselves. This opens the door, because I was quite concerned that the medium and larger dairy guys would get hosed on the thing. And I wanted to make sure that 85% of our milk comes from the medium and large producers. And I was kind of wondering, well, are they going to get 85% of the money, which they shouldn't get maybe 85%, but they should get used fairly. And then we had EB or EJ or the
EB,
lady from the
EB Flurry.
EB
Flurry.
She was stressing the 70% is dairy. Well, sure, it's only 70% because maple has come in like gangbusters in the last few years, and producing 1 million gallons of syrup instead of 200,000 gallons, and so that raised their percentage way up, which took away from ag. And but I don't know, did I say that we did get dairy up to 75%?
No, I don't think you did say that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't easy, but I got to 75%, or within a point one way or the other. And so I said, well, we got to get this freaking money out to the farms. We can't keep arguing and hearing testimony. So that's where we ended up.
Okay, thanks. Any questions for Bobby?
Terry's muted.
Okay. I don't see any little blue hands. John Bartholomew's on. Hi, John. Any questions for Bobby? All right, not seeing any, Bobby. Really appreciate it. You're welcome to stay, or if you have to go, you can, but thank you so much. We'll get Mike to go through the bill with us, which, Linda, do you have that available to be loaded? What's the best?
I can either show you the bill, the full bill, or the summary, section by section summary that Mike made.
Mike, what would you suggest?
It really depends on how much detail you want to go into. The section by sections, 2.5 pages long, and pretty just the general points, major points.
Okay, why don't we, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
Now, it sounds like the section by section might be good, and John O'Brien has his hand raised. So John?
Thank you. This is a question for Bobby and Mike, and maybe somebody at the agency too, but I just wondered where that 70% of Vermont agriculture number came from, given that if it included, say, all the dairy value-added processors, because that's certainly part of dairy, or even, as we've noted, with so much of this potential money going right through the farmers to vendors like the feed and seed people, are they counted too in that calculation?
No, it was the dairy milk and dairy processing. But my argument against that number, John, and probably yours too, is that if you don't have the milk, you aren't gonna have any of these ice creams and cheeses and yogurts and all these other things. So you don't, a person that has a heart and a lot of other organs, but if you remove the heart from the rest of the body, there's no other functions that can happen. And that was my argument against using that 70% and taking money away from dairy to give to the processors, but I'm not talking about the small processors, but the big guys. And we did finally get that capped at 60,000, and once that 9,000 or not 7 million's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, no, I just wondered, it seems like dairy might even be higher if you started with every small dairy farm and worked your way all the way up to the agri-market. It seems like that's got to be a huge chunk of Vermont agriculture.
Well, Michael may jump in here with his recollection of it, but the numbers came right from the ag agency, from EB, and then we even double checked and for making sure that was right, and they came back with answers that was an accurate number.
Great, thanks, Bobby.
All right, any other questions for Bobby before we turn to Mike?
I'll stay on for a while, so if something comes up and you have other questions, I'll be glad to try to answer.
Thanks, Bobby. We really
Maybe-
appreciate it. Yeah, John?
Just a quick follow-up, and Mike might go over this in a section by section, but of the non-dairy farms, how was that money going to get distributed? Because at least dairy, has a certain sort of infrastructure, and we track them pretty well. Whereas there, gosh knows how many other non-dairy farms in Vermont if we start counting everybody who goes to a farmer's market.
Yeah, 4,000.
Yeah.
It looks like that might be in the section by section that Mike is about to go through. So should
Okay,
we?
great.
Great. Mike, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so good morning. This is Mike O'Grady, Ledge Counsel. As Senator Starr just summarized for you, S351 basically does 6 major things. It creates a dairy assistance program for milk producers and dairy processors, under which $22.8 million is appropriated, 19 million for milk producers and 3.8 for dairy processors. It also creates an agricultural producer and processor assistance program, which appropriates 7 million for that. It appropriates $192,000 for VHCB to provide additional technical farm and food business and mental health assistance post-COVID for food and farm businesses. It also amends VHCB's authority so that it is more clearly a nonprofit and can benefit from that designation in applying for and obtaining grants. It requires the Agency of Agriculture to do education and outreach regarding the assistance programs, and then it has a provision about posting farm safety COVID-19 precautionary measures on the Agency of Agriculture's website. So turning now to the section by section. Section 1 creates that dairy assistance program for milk producers and dairy processors. Milk producers are the farms that produce milk and will include dairy cow, dairy goat, and dairy sheep farms. Dairy processors are persons or businesses that produce products such as butter, cheese, cream, buttermilk, infant formula, ice cream, or yogurt. They will be reimbursed for their economic harm, and economic harm means their expenses or lost revenue or both related to the 2020 COVID-19 public health emergency. So in order to qualify for assistance, they have to be currently producing milk or dairy products, be in good standing, which your committee has discussed, and then accurately demonstrate to the agency economic harm that occurred or accrued on or after March 1, 2020 and before December 1, 2020. Then you see the breakdown of the maximum amount of awards that both the milk producers and the dairy processors can receive. The categories are based on the current tiers for regulation by the agency of milk producers and dairy processors, with the caveat that the upper tiers for dairy processors were whittled down. So the top two tiers are being included in basically one of the middle tiers. So a small farm will receive a maximum award of up to $14,500. A certified small farm shall receive up to $29,000. A medium farm shall receive up to $55,000, and a large farm shall receive up to $100,000. Dairy processors processing less than 500 pounds of milk per day shall receive up to $30,000. Those processing 500 to 9,999 pounds receive up to 40. Those processing 10,000 to 49,999 shall receive up to 50. And those processing 50,000 pounds or more of milk per day shall receive up to 60,000. I want to stop now and note that Nolan has created a very good spreadsheet of the assistance programs. Basically, the amount of appropriation, the number of farms or processors in the categories, the end amounts, the assumptions for who's going to apply and who's going to get the max. It's really kind of a great snapshot view into how the program's going to work. So as I've already mentioned, in section 2, you get the appropriation for the dairy assistance program. It's 22.819 for the milk producers, 3.8 for the dairy processors. If funds are unspent on November 1st, they get to revert to the agency, who can then reallocate them under either the dairy assistance program or the ag producer and processor assistance program, which we will now turn to in section 3, which is on the second page of the section by section. So section 3 establishes that agricultural producer and processor assistance program. Again, it's going to provide relief to those who have suffered economic harm. So the eligible applicants under this program are agricultural producers who are non-dairy farmers who had a gross annual income of $10,000 or more from the sale of agricultural products in 1 of 2 or 3 of the 5 calendar years preceding. So that's going to cut down on the number of farms out there because not everyone is going to be having an annual income of $10,000 from sale of ag products. But the eligible applicants will also include commercial meat processors, commercial slaughterhouses, and farmers markets, again, all of whom have to show economic harm in order to receive assistance. So they have to be currently operating, they have to be in good standing, and they have to accurately demonstrate that economic harm between March 1st and December 1, 2020. They also cannot have had a net business profit between March 1, 2020 and August 1, 2020. The Senate committee did not want to award a processor or producer who has actually had profit over that time frame if they simply had expenses related to COVID. They really wanted this to be about those who are suffering harm and are struggling and need the assistance. So then you get to the maximum grant payments. The tiers here are based on annual gross sales. These tiers were drawn from the USDA/US Census. And so applicants with annual gross sales of $10,000 to $24,999 shall receive up to $2,500. Those with $25,000 to $49,999 shall receive up to $5,000. Those that receive or have gross sales of $50,000 to $99,000 shall receive up to 10, and those with gross sales of $100,000 or more shall receive up to 20. Now, there's $7 million appropriated for this program. There's likely going to be more demand for it than $7 million. This is a first come, first serve program. If there is significant additional demand, the General Assembly can address that in August and September when you return. Section 4 is the appropriations, again, $7 million. There is that reversion provision. Unspent funds on November 1 revert to the agency for reallocation. So I'm going to stop there because that's the ag producer and processor program, and see if you have any questions.
Thanks, Mike. I think what I find striking about this is that, and I'm not going to ask anybody to justify it. It's just when we had the presentation from the agency, which of course we know is worth $50 million, they had emphasized that small and medium farms were struggling a little bit more. And so they had sort of favored the small and medium farms. The larger farms were able to take advantage of the PPP program and what have you. And under this schedule of payment, the small farms would receive about a third of what they would under the agency's plan and what we actually ended up passing, given the fact that we knew we weren't going to be able to probably get all $50 million. The small certified folks under this would get about half of what they were going to get. Medium farms would get a little more than half, but the large guys would get almost what they would have gotten under the agency's plan. So those that, you know, have probably a lower cost of production and have been able to take advantage of some of these other federal plans or programs are doing better off. So I just wondered, you know, Bobby, you to comment or you don't have to. I just wanted to point that out.
The testimony, the testimony that we received was that the big guys, some of them are losing $75,000 a week, not a month, a week. And testimony that we received from smaller farms, the real ones that were really hurting were the ones that were making cheese. And if you notice that we've got a pretty good subsidy in the, or payment in there for processing the small amounts. And so we loaded it heavy on the low end, but the medium and the big guys are taking, you know, they produce 85% of the milk and they were taking the biggest hits. And the big guys at 100,000, that might cover maybe 1 month, not even 1 month, but it would cover, you know, 100,000 sounds like a lot of money, but it's not when you see their incomes. The guys that were medium-sized farms that were getting like say $75,000 milk checks, they see theirs drop to $40,000 and $50,000. So they were losing like $25,000, $30,000 a milk check. So, I mean, there just isn't enough money to pay the bill to cover it, but
Well, I had one woman from Swanton, a farmer from Swanton, who called me up and told me that she, and she was either small certified or a medium farmer. And
I
she
think it was medium.
she had lost $65,000 in each of the last 2 milk checks.
Yeah, medium. That was a medium. I believe Longway, I think they were medium firms.
Yeah,
And
Tom
I had
Bach-
a lot.
I'm sorry, Bobby, didn't mean to interrupt you.
I just was going to say that I had a long chat with her one evening, and they were still one of 3 farms that were current with their grain bill according to the grain man. So, but you know, it's damn rough over all the different sizes.
Yeah. Tom Bach has his hand up, and Nolan did, but I don't know if he's rethought that. But Tom, why don't you go ahead and ask your question, and then we'll go to Nolan. Tom, you need to unmute yourself. Yeah, unmute you.
Okay, got it.
Okay,
it.
good. Thanks.
Question for Michael or Bobby. Bobby, you mentioned that many of these farmers and processors have received either UI or PUA money. Are there any numbers available? How many got money or how much money was distributed to farmers and processors? You know anything about that?
No, but I'll tell you, I haven't talked with one big farm or small farm that hasn't applied. I mean, I've talked with a lot of them, especially up north here, and anybody that's called, and of course worked through the unemployment department, helping them get that money. But no, I haven't received any numbers back. Maybe, I don't know if there's a way Nolan could check that out through joint fiscal for us, but it would be a nice number to have.
Nolan, do you want to comment? And then John O'Brien's hand is up as well. Nolan?
Sure, Nolan Langwell, the Joint Fiscal Office. I can see what we can find out. The problem is, and I usually, for most of you may or may not know, I usually staff healthcare, and we've been trying to follow the best we can in terms of what federal dollars have gone to different healthcare providers. And basically it all comes down to how well that particular federal agency posts and how much information they post. And we're finding HRSA posts a little bit and CDC more. So I don't know that we can find out how much each individual farm has gotten. I can look into it.
I think a group thing would work, Nolan.
Sure.
Certainly wouldn't want to pick out names and that.
Okay, I can look that up. And then the other comment I just want to make, maybe in defense of the Senate committee a little bit, is they were given a box of 30 million. And so we created a spreadsheet to try to, once they figured out how much they wanted to put into each box, dairy producers versus the processors versus other non-dairy, we were trying to fit into those boxes and to try to figure out how many people would get each thing. So I know the committee would have liked to have given each particular category more money, but they were working within that box of 30 million. I'm sure if they had 50 million, they would have given each of those more. So that's just one thing to keep in mind.
Thanks, Nolan. So I have John O'Brien's hand up, and Vicky after John. And Tom, did you forget to lower your hand?
I did.
And you need to mute yourself. Thank you. All right, John.
Just a couple clarifying questions. One, Bobby, you know, we've been wrestling with this. We went from 50 down to 20 with a potential 10 later for that tier 1, tier 2. And I didn't know if on your side, this 30 million was a tier 1, or was it broken up like we're sort of getting direction on? And then the other thing was whether all the farmers you've been talking to have all applied for that CFAP federal program, because I was just talking to our a dairy farmer in Tunbridge last night who didn't even know about it. So I just wondered how widespread that was.
Well, you know, and that's crazy. The ag department, the agency should be onto that big time. And we've talked to them about getting the word out. And, you know, when these programs come along and ASCS, you know, the ag, federal ag people, and they claim they've been doing mailings and suggestions and getting word out to farmers. But any farmers that I've talked with, the little guys, a lot of them didn't realize that they could get unemployment. And so once Cameron Brown, the guys that run the UI, shaped up and Michael Harrington, and they added farms on, you know, I spent many evenings, I guess, calling the little guys and telling them to get their applications in, because they could be drawing not only a couple $100 a week from Vermont, but they could get that 600 from the feds. And so all the ones that I've talked to have gotten on. The biggest thing was getting their numbers in from their previous year, so that Michael and Cameron could figure out what part of how much unemployment they should be able to receive. But I haven't heard in the last 2.5 weeks, I haven't heard from any of them that are still having problems. So I take it that they're on and are getting money from that.
So I'll just comment here that I received an email within the last couple of days from Diane Bothfeld, which I'm sure went out to all of the dairy farmers that are, you know, registered with the state. And it gave the information. It said basically get ready to file for this. You know, when it comes, it's going to come quick, and you're going to have to be ready to apply for it. So, you know, I think they're doing. And now, does everybody do internet? I don't know. Maybe they're doing stuff by mail as well. So,
Carolyn?
Yeah.
So, yeah, this dairy farmer had gotten that, and I think a W-9 with it just to prep for it. But
Yes.
that program that Rodney applied for, the CFAP, whatever it's called, I wondered how many dairy farmers in Vermont were applying to that, like Rodney did, and hadn't seen anything yet.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
And I actually need to call Wendy Wilton back. She called 2 days ago, and I have not had a chance to call her back. Things have just been crazy here. So Wendy,
Carolyn,
Vicky?
I asked that Mrs. Longway during our conversation the night before last, I think, and they haven't received any of those federal dollars as of yet.
the CFAP money?
Pardon?
The CFAP money?
I don't know I just
it's-
asked her if she'd received any payments from the federal government.
Well,
And-
Rodney said he hadn't either.
No, they haven't. I don't think they've sent a dime out yet.
Yeah.
The only thing they're getting is their PPP money and their UPA money.
Right. And the CFAPs, that, Mike, that stands for Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, right? Yeah. Okay,
Correct.
so thanks. Vicky, your hand is up, and then Rodney. We'll go to Rod.
Good morning.
Wait. Well,
Sure.
hold on one sec, Vicky. John,
Just that first question I had for Bobby would this all money go out? Would the S351, all that money go out as tier 1, or would some of it be held back for a tier 2?
All of this money would go out in tier 1. And then we've actually retained some that we could use for tier 2 fund if needed.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Vicky, thanks for your patience. Appreciate it. And then we'll go to Rodney.
Yeah, thank you. And Bobby, I just have a few questions about some of the things your committee talked about or testimony when they talked about fair and equitable. And this has to do with that 7 million for other types of farming. Fair and equitable, real ones that are really hurting. I mean, obviously our dairy is in tremendous struggle right now just to survive every day, holding on by their fingernails, obviously due to the type of farming it is. But what about those other farmers you're talking about, slaughterhouses, our organic vegetables? I mean, they do have some control over what they can charge and go online and have other forms of way to sell their products. So whereas dairy, obviously, you know, it's just a whole different kind of farming. So what was the reasoning to show that there was actual that much harm, those who are really hurting, you said, with those other farms that are going under the 7 million?
Well, yeah, I guess you'd have to sit in or walk in my shoes to figure that all out. But it was just rough sledding and like we heard from a person that raises turkeys that they don't sell until, you know, the fall, until Thanksgiving time. And they were gonna have to spend, you know, a few $1,000s keeping their line 6 feet apart and putting up plexiglass so that they, you know, wouldn't lose stuff on others. They figured they were going to spend maybe $20,000 retrofitting their slaughter facilities. But I don't know how many of you been to the store lately, but beef, all meats are selling higher than heck, and I can't figure out how they're going to even apply for money, but they wanted to have some there to deal with those that have lost money. And you know, you don't always get everything you want and you don't always win, but you have to reach a compromise somewhere along the way and try to make it work. And that, I think that's what we did in our committee. And we had a 5-0 vote on the thing, so it was unanimous, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy process. We worked hard and sometimes the discussion got a little bit unpleasant, but we got it done.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll go next. You're muted, Carolyn. But anyways,
Sorry, my husband's cooking breakfast. So,
that sounds good.
and
So 3 things. The agency did send forms, a W-9 and a form for getting a direct deposit in preparation for this money. I did fill mine out and send it back. I know I don't qualify for this, but maybe someday we'll figure out that agriculture is more than just dairy. As far as the federal program, I don't know that if I've received it yet or not, because that will be a direct deposit. But I looked on the site, tracking site, and Vermont has started making payments. So some farms may have received some money, and but it didn't look like there wasn't very many farms that had signed up yet for that. The other thing is to address Vicky and some other people's comments that for some of these other products like vegetables or maple syrup or whatever, you have the control of your price. Well, that depends on whether you're selling into the wholesale markets or if you're selling into retail or value added. Because like maple syrup, if you go wholesale, the price is set. So much a pound. There's different grades. Some grades are all the same. So you don't set your price. You don't get to set your own price in the wholesale market. And like dairy, if you sell retail value added, you can set your own price. But if it doesn't matter what the commodity is. If you're selling into wholesale, like dairy mostly does, you don't get to set your price.
No.
So, think that just because you're not a dairy, you get to set your own price. Depends on what you're doing. And that's the same thing with dairy. It depends on what you're doing.
If I may, we're working.
Go ahead, Bobby.
Rodney, you're very right about what you said. And I've heard that some of the maple guys, and the bulk of them sell a lot of it at wholesale. It's down, way down, like $20 a gallon or something. And I don't know what it costs to produce the stuff, but I know it's about 50% of what you could sell it at retail for, but the retail market is only so large. And we're working on a thing to add to your 656 bill on getting ready, trying to figure out this milk pricing business and going a lot deeper with it than the way it's being done at present. That's another day though.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. Yeah, we were potentially covering that today, but I don't think we're going to have time.
So can I just quick follow up?
Absolutely.
So just so you understand on maple syrup, there was a stretch of time after the state of emergency was declared that you couldn't even take your syrup to a bulk place. They wouldn't even, so you're still holding your supply. We were supplying Capitol Plaza with syrup. And that was like a $500-600 a month income. That once that restaurant shut down, we're not selling that. It's still sitting in the sugar house. So this has affected more than just dairy farms.
Well, you would be in, Rodney, with the way our bill's set up.
Yeah, actually, so would I. I could probably qualify. They just canceled the New York Sheep and Wool Festival, and I definitely make an annual gross sales of $10,000. So, I could probably qualify for at least 2,500. I just worry about our dairy farmers.
You guys are gonna have to renege from voting on this because you got personal gain involved.
Yeah, but we're not the only ones. I don't think we have to recuse.
I don't plan on getting any money out of this anyway, so.
Yeah, because you're gonna turn all.
I don't qualify for anything, so I don't think I got a conflict.
You don't have a conflict. And Rodney, you're gonna turn all your maple syrup into maple cream and make those evil, wonderful donuts.
We're trying.
Sharon's been really patient. She has her hand up, and John O'Brien does, and we're kind of looking at, Michael Grady, how long can you stay with us? Until 9:30 or quarter of?
I'm here until 10.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, great.
And I'm about to send you the CFAP tracking document that Representative Graham just referenced.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay,
I
Sharon,
mo-
Ed.
I moved our meeting up to 10 so that, we could hang out with you guys and try to get this mess figured out and.
I don't know that we're gonna figure it out, Bobby, but I really appreciate you being able to be with us. Thank you. So go ahead, Sharon.
So thank you, Madam Chair. Um, so one of the primary differences between the Senate bill and what we have voted out of committee is that farms, so I'm just making sure that I understand this, and I realize, and I may not, farmers, so the 14 farms that we lost in May, the 14 dairy farms, in our bill, they would not be eligible. Is that correct? For recompense for their losses, so their vendors would go unpaid? Is that, but in the Senate bill, there would be an opportunity for them to, is this right? Because they, the economic, well, I'm worried about the farms that we've lost. They have unpaid debt, and that impacts all of the vendors that they owe money to. So I guess somebody said something that triggered this line of thought.
I don't, Michael, correct me, but I don't think they would qualify. Would they under ours, or would they qualify for March? Would they qualify for, I thought they had to be farming to qualify. So I
Under
don't.
under both the Senate and the House, you have to be currently producing.
So, and I guess I'm thinking we're just going to say, oh, tough, you do bankruptcy and sorry for your vendors, or should there be a provision somewhere that provides for the vendors in the dairy industry, so that even if the farmer who has lost the good fight has gone under, those vendors that are carrying, as we know, the number hasn't shrunk. The grain vendors alone in the state were carrying what, 2-point-something million in unsecured debt. I guess
I think
wondering.
you missed a few zeros. It's like hundreds of million, 200 million.
Was it 200 million? I remember
So Mike, I thought that if you were producing on March 1st, you could take advantage of this.
You can apply for harm that occurred between March 1st and December 1st, but you have to be currently producing in order to apply.
is that set at the federal? The
No,
federal standard?
it's what you and the Senate both said.
I heard that, Sharon. I tend to agree with you. There's some way
It's
we
what
can make
the
it-
agency proposed as well.
I mean, part of the reason these guys have gone under is because of COVID, and they just haven't had markets. Is there some way we can fix that? So if you were producing on March 1st, that you could apply?
The eligibility is all up to you, yes. So if you want to do that, you could do that.
Okay. All right.
It would be a rough sell, Carolyn.
Well, come on. The reason these guys have gone out is probably because of COVID. If they were, maybe they had one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel, but it was COVID that pushed them in. And if they were producing on March 1st, and COVID hit us all like a ton of bricks, on March 13th, we all closed down. Don't you think, Bobby, they should be able to recoup some of their losses and pay off their vendors? We all know this money is going to be in their bank account for about 30 seconds.
Yeah, it would be nice to do that if we can sell it, but I don't know if we can sell it, you know? If you can't, there's no need of trying to sell a product if you have no market. And I don't know if our fellow legislators would buy it, but it's something that certainly we could chat about, and if we have the time.
Okay, all right. Thanks. Let's chat about it. Rodney's waving his hand wildly. Rodney. Then we're going to go to John O'Brien.
Well, I'm one of them that is caught in this middle because I don't produce milk right now, although I still own 5 milk and dairy cows that my
Well,
niece.
get the milk in them, Rodney. Milk them suckers.
But you know, in all fairness, that I know some of these farms that went out in May was because there was such a push for Agromac members to get more base, these larger farms. And some of the smaller farms that were struggling, these large farms came up and said, I'll buy your whole herd if you include the base. And they, so, you know, they give them a fairly good price for the cows. So they sold them, and some of them cows went to slaughterhouses and they just kept the base. That's what they wanted. So
They could only buy,
they could continue to make more milk.
they could only sell half of their base though, right?
Yeah, but they were after it
Yeah.
so much as they would buy the whole herd at an increased price to get it. So that
Yeah.
they wouldn't get hammered so bad with the base reduction.
So presumably the price that they recoup from their cows paid off their debt to the feed and the seeds.
I don't know whether they got enough to pay off the debt. That would be individual farm information that we wouldn't have. Some people have more debt than others, so. But that, you know, and I'm sure not every farm was that case, but some were.
Yeah.
And, we all have different situations. But my thought on this situation might be that, okay, you pick March 1st as what your size of the farm was and so on. And if you milk cows till May, you could prorate that amount. You know, you take it like 10 months, divide by that amount by 10 months times 2 months, and might be one way to do it. But other than that, I don't know how you could do it.
Okay. John O'Brien has his hand up. John?
This is why it's frustrating not to be in room 32. I just had a quick follow-up for Mike and Rodney. Circling back to maple syrup. Mike, do you know if maple syrup is counted as a commodity at the federal level so that maple sugar producers could qualify for CFAP?
I don't think maple is listed as a commodity or a specialty crop or even a non. I will have to go look at the CFAP rule to do that.
But it sounds like there has been economic harm if a lot of both at a wholesale level and also at, like Rodney's saying, restaurants and institutions must have been a big destination for maple syrup, and with them closed down, I can imagine it sort of followed the milk price and that it tanked.
The big deal here is going to be on hemp, John.
Yeah.
Those guys have taken it bad.
And that's the one piece we really need to get through, Bobby, is the hemp piece, which is on 656.
Yeah, that's in your bill. Yeah.
Yeah.
We probably will vote that Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah.
So I just searched the CFAP rule for maple, and it didn't return any results. I also searched it for hemp and it didn't return any results.
Oh, so they're out then.
Okay. So one of our other goals, well, we actually didn't get all the way through this, and we probably ought to spend the rest of our time doing that. Linda requested that we try and wrap this up by 9:45 so that she can get Senate Ag going. But let's see, Terry, Maple, he said Maple, Terry just said maple is not perishable, so you still can sell it later. Milk is not the same. Okay. Milk is perishable, right? So why don't we go through the rest of this? But eventually, Bobby, we want to know what you're going to do to 656. So
I think the only thing is, to my knowledge, up to this point, we're just gonna add some things to it. We aren't gonna,
well, that's what I'm worried about.
but it would just be good stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But we do want to hear about that eventually. But why don't we finish up with the Dairy Assistance Program? So if we have any questions for you, Bobby, we can ask them. Mike, where were we? Were we on section?
You were on
3?
section 5.
Oh, section 5.
So that is requires the Agency of Ag to do outreach and education regarding the assistance programs. And it also has a requirement that the agency report to the General Assembly monthly until January 1, 2021, regarding the status of the program. So you'll have some information about how well it's doing.
Okay.
Hopefully it's something similar to like the CFAP status document. Section 6 relates to farm worker health and safety. There was discussion in the Senate committee about getting information to farms about what the precautionary measures for COVID-19 should be. Apparently BOSHA has already created that material, so no new material needs to be created. But Section 6 requires the agency to post that material on its website and to post it in English and Spanish. So it is available to those people who are working on farms.
Great.
Section 7 is an appropriation to VHCB of $192,000 from the Coronavirus Relief Fund to provide business, financial, and mental health assistance to farm and food businesses that suffered losses or expenses due to COVID-19. Ella came in and said that there is some significant demand for this, and they could use this money to meet that demand and to help out the farm and food businesses that are suffering. Then Section 8 amends VHCB's general authority. VHCB would like to be able to more readily and easily apply for nonprofit grants that are available in the grant universe. But it's not really clear from their existing authority whether they have nonprofit authority or whether they're just a for-profit corporate entity. So Section 8 clarifies that VHCB has nonprofit corporate authority, and that will allow them to more readily access those grants that are available to nonprofits. Section 9, you may remember the Rural Economic Development Program that the Senate Committee and you passed a couple of years ago. That's cited at VHCB. It is doing very well with the $75,000 appropriation. It has brought into the state almost $4 million. So there was a sunset on the READY program in January of 2021, or actually July of 2021. This just repeals that sunset, and there's actually discussion of giving the READY program some additional money to bring even more money into the state. It's had a significant multiplier effect. And then section 10 is the effective date. Everything's in effect on passage.
Okay. Any questions for Mike or Bobby? Rodney, your hand is up. I'm wondering if you have another question or if you just didn't lower it. Okay. Any questions? All right. I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, Nolan has to leave, and Nolan, we understand, and thank you so much for this piece of work. I don't know if you all have had a chance to look at Nolan's document that's on our website, but it's really, really concise and good. So regarding S351. So if there are no questions for Nolan. Okay, we have just, who spoke?
I was going to, but go ahead, Karen.
No, go ahead, Bobby.
Well, I was just gonna say, I've got to, I was gonna check out to go, and you asked about 656 a little bit. Well, we had that ready stuff, that sunset language. We had those things already, I think, added into 656, but it's things like that. It's nothing that's really controversial that we're going to be adding in that I know of. And if there is, I'll certainly let you know.
Oh, yeah.
And the only other thing I should say is I feel a little bit bad that I didn't get to you folks sooner with what we were attempting to do with this culvert dairy stuff, but it's been very time demanding. I mean, the full Senate has been very time demanding, where we covered 2 committees and then we have caucuses of the whole. And I mean, you folks have probably been through the same thing, but I feel bad that I didn't spend some time talking with you folks and keeping you up to speed where we were and how we were doing. And there really wasn't much to report until last week anyways. But anyways, thanks for having me, and appreciate.
So Bobby, hang on one second. Number one, I think it makes a lot of sense to put that VHCB language into 656. If you want to do that. And because who knows what's going to happen with this bill. And Vicky has her hand up, and it looks like she might want to ask you something. So Vicky.
I do. Thank you. Bobby, I've had a lot of questions about the food scraps, food residuals issue. Is there anything in any of your bills to save the day?
We tried, and we have tried the pickup you're talking about at home. And yes, there's a bill either on its way to you or it will be coming from Natural Resources, and maybe Mike's in on that, that allows the transporter, I think, to make the determination of whether or not they can pick it up and whether or not it can go to the landfill. Is there something on that, Michael, that Chris is working on?
Yep, 227 includes a variance authority that A&R can issue a variance to a commercial hauler or a solid waste facility from the food residual recycling requirements. But you have to meet the standards for a variance that are set forth in the bill. It's what A&R came in with. The haulers were supportive. Some of the solid waste management entities are not supportive of it. Some of it are.
But A&R is supportive of that, right, Michael?
Yes.
So it really is going to help until, what is it, January 1, Michael?
The requirement is July 1 for people to start offering those services. So it will allow those, assuming it gets passed before July 1, it will allow those haulers to get a variance. The variance is for 60 days, but it can be renewed without any limit on renewal of the variance.
So like if you get questions, Vicky,
Mhm.
have them talk to their haulers about applying. And because it's going to be a mess up north here for us, that's for sure.
Mhm.
And as far as the food scraps to the farm, you know, where they can go and do composting like the chicken guys are doing,
Mhm.
A&R has pushed that out until next July.
Oh.
So that
Mhm.
part, good, but
That's good.
the local pickups, they, like Austin's and all those guys are gonna have to apply to A&R if we get this bill done, and we should have got it done sooner, but it took a lot of work to get that done. And is that on an H bill, Michael, or is that an S bill?
That's an S bill.
So you're gonna have to stay on to your counterparts in the House to put that through.
Oh, thank you, Bobby.
Thanks, Bob. Rodney has his hand up. Linda is telling me that we have to have a very hard stop by 9:55 at the latest. So let's do our best to get done by then. Rodney?
Yeah, just a quick update. I just checked with my bank and I have not received any payment from the government. Yeah,
Okay. I will call Wendy Wilton. If we have a moment, I'll call her between the floor, you know, our committee wrapping up and the floor of the House to see what I can find out. And then I'll email you all and let you know what I hear. Any other questions? We've gotten through the dairy assistance program that the Senate did, 351. And we passed out our bill yesterday, or not yesterday, 2 days ago, which is a little bit different. And we'll, I don't know how it's going to work. I think, Bobby, you're going to work on yours first and it's going to come to us. And then we'll probably end up with a committee of conference or something. I don't know how it's going to work exactly.
Well, I was just gonna chat with you guys about that. We haven't had much time, but somehow we need to get this done because I think you've probably been told we're going home the 26th or something like that.
Yeah,
And
you know.
we really need to get something passed into the governor and get this freaking money back to the farms. They can't wait until September or August. So sometime along, we've got to chat and figure out how we're going to do this. Because we can't fool around weeks in a committee or conference.
Well, I think that's something we can all agree on. We need to get this money out to our farmers as quickly as possible.
Yes, very important. And we're already a month late, probably.
Yeah, yeah. Any final questions for Bobby or Michael? I've got two hands. Terry?
Hi, Bobby. Not a question, just saying that if you start messing around with 656, I hope you add Addison County Fair and Field Days to that mess. Thank you.
Is that Jesus?
No pressure.
No, that should have been done long ago. We thought we'd taken care of that, but thanks, Terry.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else we want him to load on to 656?
May have to do that in conference.
Yeah.
How about funding for the fairs?
Hopefully that's going to be in the budget, when we get around to it. The standard monies that we always give them that they could use for change the language so they could use it for operating or whatever, rather than capital things. But we get by this farm stuff, then we can get on to that other stuff in approach. But I mentioned it on our side in approach. Of course, I'm sitting there, so I can, but yeah, hopefully we can help them.
Oh, good. Thank you.
And Rodney, I see your hand is up. Did you just forget to lower it, or do you have something else? Okay, great. Any other questions for Bobby or Michael or anybody?
Can we attach humane officers to? Never mind.
We got to get humane officers out of the house.
Thank you, guys. I'll check out.
Hey, Bobby, what's going to happen with 254?
Who's that?
The adequate shelter for livestock.
Just keep watching. It's on its way over. I don't know if we did final reading and passed it yesterday or did third reading, but it's on its way. We got that squared away.
Okay, any amendments to it?
No, tried to though. No, we took care of that.
Yeah, good, good. All right. Thanks so much. Well, why don't we wrap it up now so everybody can get on to their next meetings. We'll be on the floor in just about 12 minutes or so. And Bobby went away, but thank you. And I wish you all a really good weekend. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, as always, to Michael O'Grady and Linda Lehman for helping us out. And this time to Nolan as well. And you all have a safe weekend, and we'll see you next week.